Well, the next thing on our program is we're going to go into our OEM panel, and that's one of the highlights that we really enjoy is hearing from the OEMs, and we're going to have quite a treat as a part of that today. We have Gabriella Capella from Bloomberg News that's going to be here. Gabby, she likes to be called Gabby, has covered the global auto industry for Bloomberg News and Bloomberg Business Week magazine for nearly a decade. Based in Detroit, she has chronicled the industry's shift towards electrification and U.S. efforts to reshape the industrial policy to decouple from China and reshore manufacturing. A native of Atlanta, she has reported on EV battery industry from China, Japan, Korea, and her 2024 profile of the Chinese EV juggernaut, BYD, won honors from the Society Advancing Business Editing and Writing. Prior to moving to Motor City, Gabriella covered Israeli technology, served as a foreign correspondent to Sao Paulo in Brazil, and started out as a debt reporter covering the 2008 financial crisis in New York. So we're really excited to have Gabby here with us today, and it's a treat to have her here. I think she's going to generate some very interesting discussion with our OEMs. With that, I'd like to welcome Gabby to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. I'm so excited to be here, and I think we're going to have a fascinating discussion. First, I want to tell you a little bit about the other panelists that we're going to have with me. And I guess as I call you, as I start talking about you, you can come up on stage and take your seat, and then we'll start. First is David Fernandez. He's the Senior Vice President of Mazda Toyota Manufacturing. David serves as the Senior Vice President and Chief Compliance Officer, responsible for overseeing manufacturing administration functions at Mazda Toyota and as part of their leadership steering committee. Mazda Toyota Manufacturing is located in Huntsville. It's a joint venture between the two parent companies, and it is the only facility in that the North American manufacturer has to build both the Toyota Corolla Cross and the Mazda CX-50. Before joining Mazda Toyota, David served as the president of Toyota Mississippi. He's also been the Senior Vice President in Toyota South Africa Motors, and he was the plant president for Toyota Manufacturing Alabama. He joined Toyota in 1998 as a group leader at the manufacturing plant in West Virginia. He served in multiple leadership roles, working at 6 different manufacturing plants and a global assignment in South Africa. Thank you for being here, David. Next, we've got Federico Koslowski. He became the new president and chief executive officer of Mercedes-Benz US International in May of 2024. In this role, he leads MBUSI's 6,000 plus team members in the assembly of the GLE, GLE Coupe, GLS, and Mercedes Maybach GLS in Alabama. The MBUSA plant is also the assembly location of the all-electric SUV versions of the EQS and EQE and the Mercedes Maybach EQS. This plant was the first major automotive manufacturing location in the state of Alabama, serving as the catalyst for additional OEMs and automotive suppliers. It has also encouraged other businesses to come to the area. In addition to those MBUSA employees, the plant secures more than 55,000 additional jobs with suppliers and service providers in the region. Thank you, Federico, for being here. Next, I've got Shane Nice. He is the Chief Quality Officer and Director of Quality for Hyundai Motor Manufacturing, Alabama. Shane is a 35-year veteran of the automotive manufacturing industry and is currently the Chief Quality Officer and the Director of Quality at Hyundai Motor Manufacturing, Alabama. He oversees quality processes and operations at the up to 400,000 vehicle capacity plant. He joined Hyundai in 2003 to lead the facilitation, organizational, and manufacturing process development for General Assembly startup in early 2005. From 2003 until 2021, he started as the group leader in the General Assembly Department and was promoted 3 times in 18 years. Prior to joining Hyundai Motor Manufacturing Alabama, Shane had a 13-year career with Subaru of Indiana Automotive, where he held various manufacturing roles. Thank you, Shane, for being here. I've also got Jason Pickering. He is the Vice President of Operations with Polaris in Madison, Alabama. He leads the transformative initiatives across manufacturing, lean operations, and workforce development. With over 2 decades of experience in the automotive and industrial sectors, Jason has built a reputation for driving operational excellence while cultivating high-performing, resilient teams. As chair of North Alabama Works, the Regional Workforce Council of North Alabama, Jason plays a pivotal role in shaping regional talent strategies. He has championed programs that connect industry with education, close skill gaps, and create career pathways for emerging and incumbent workers. I know that's going to be a big topic of our panel today, so Jason, I'm really happy to have you with us. Okay, last but not least, Lamar Whitaker. He is the Vice President, Plant Lead of the Alabama Auto Plant Honda Development and Manufacturing of America. Lamar is responsible for overall vehicle and engine manufacturing operations. He leads more than 4,500 Honda associates at the plant in Lincoln, Alabama, to produce over 340,000 vehicles annually, including the Honda Odyssey minivan, Pilot, and Passport SUVs and Ridgeline pickup truck, as well as the V6 engines that power them. Lamar started his career at Honda in 2001 as a mass production buyer at AAP and has held numerous positions within AAP's purchasing operations. Thank you, Lamar, for being here. Okay, I'm going to take a seat down there if my mic works, and maybe I can move this back a little bit so I can see all of you. Help me with that. Okay, great. Okay, so we had a good call to kind of plan and think about all the topics we were going to discuss today, and I think one thing that we can all agree on is that there's a lot of change happening in the auto industry right now. I like to say I've been doing this for almost a decade. I've never been bored, but this is definitely, there's a lot, it's an exciting time to be covering auto. So one thing I wanted to ask y'all is, there's a lot of change happening in terms of geopolitics, in terms of our regulatory regime is changing, our sustainability goals, as a country are changing. You guys have to worry about incorporating all that into making vehicles. So I want to know about your supply chain management. There's been a lot of change right now. How is your supply chain management strategy changing in light of all that? And feel free to jump in, or I'll call on you if you don't.
Sure, I'll jump in on that. So Honda has produced automobiles in America for more than 40 years. And during that time, we've experienced a lot of change, but our philosophy has always been to build our products close to where they are sold. And nearly 2/3 of the vehicles sold in the United States are built in the United States. And to further illustrate that point, consistently, Honda models rank towards the top of Cars.com American Made Index, with 8 of the top 20 models listed this year being Honda products. So no, we're not making a drastic change in our supply chain to relocate production to the US, but to support us in our initiatives, we have constructed a robust supply chain in North America based on North American free trade agreements. And we've established good synergies between our factories in the United States, in Canada, and Mexico. That has allowed us to shift production between our sites, still meet customer demand without passing on the cost of tariffs to our customers. An example being utilizing our factories in the U.S. to build products, vehicles for the American market, utilizing our factory in Canada to build products for our export markets.
Interesting. Okay. Anybody else want to jump in?
All right. Well, maybe from our end on Mercedes, we have a product lineup and which is very diverse. You know, we produce vehicles which are very different from others. We cater vehicles, we send vehicles all over the world, so that put a big complexity in our supply chain, right? Because we have so many diversity of parts, and as we need to basically assemble these vehicles, it makes it. So what we do is basically we look into how to optimize. Starting to rely on how to optimize transportation, be more efficient. We starting heavy use of AI on how to plan our flows of material incoming. Of course, we are within the framework of USMCA, so we have also streams of work, and we've been doing that already for years to integrate as much as possible, you know, the local production of suppliers, you know, in our vehicles.
Yeah. I would just add is, you know, to me, I think supply chain for at least our products is pretty stable right now. But it's just the lack of visibility to know what's going to happen in the future. So I think that supply chain could be disrupted depending on what happens in the future, but as of right now, it's pretty stable.
I feel like a lot of the people I talk to in the auto industry are sort of, they've become so resilient. And I think, you know, the pandemic, you know, lockdowns, does this feel like the new normal to you guys? Like this is just like another day, another bit of uncertainty, or, you know?
Thank you for that question, right? I think for me, it's nothing's going to change except everything, right? And I think that we really have adapted to that from a player's perspective to really understand we have to be agile, we have to be flexible, we have to be able to be responsive. Whether that's geopolitical or it's socioeconomic or whatever change is happening in the world, we can't necessarily control all of it, so we need to be able to kind of internalize it and change quickly. So from a supply chain standpoint and really from a business standpoint too, and I think everyone here would agree, how quickly and agile we can be, how quickly we can respond to those change points and manage the changes effectively so that it doesn't impact the overall effectiveness of our business, that's the critical part, right? And I think that's really the skill of the team to be able to manage some of that complexity on a daily basis.
Okay, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is, well, what Lamar talked about was kind of really utilizing the domestic capacity for the U.S. market and then using Canada more for exports. Leaning into AI to improve efficiency, to drive down costs, just kind of being used to uncertainty. Those are the things that you're talking about. You know, those seem very like right now, getting through the moment as it's in right now. Do you have a view? Are you able to see a little bit more long term? I mean, you all mentioned the USMCA, the trade pact, aka used to be formerly known as NAFTA, now USMCA. We're heading into a period where that could be, you know, go through more changes. Do you have a plan for beyond getting through this moment, or you have to kind of wait and see and take it day by day? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think it's what Jason said. I mean, you know, none of us have a crystal ball, right? So you don't know really what's going to happen. But yeah, you have to have a plan and then be able to adjust and be flexible. I think that's about the best you can do.
Okay. We have a lot of topics to talk about, but I'm also just kind of riffing off what you guys are saying. So you talked about the things you've been doing to kind of control costs so that you don't have to pass on the cost to consumers. I think as an auto reporter, and a lot of folks in the economy have been kind of surprised by how much the car companies have been able to adjust to and absorb, and consumers really haven't seen it, you know, in the sticker price of the car so much. Do you think that is sustainable going forward in the longer term?
Well, it has to be. So it has to be, and that is the challenge we face, right? Whether daily and when we make long-term plans or short-term plans, built in that resilience in the organization, that core base of knowledge on what is coming new, whether it's new technologies on the vehicles, expectations from the customers, right? What is the framework in regards to the area or the country or the region where we work, and how we also, let's say, put it all together in a team is the challenge we face constantly, right? So building the flexibility, the understanding on how to adapt and be able to implement, let's say, new processes, implementing also the upgrades on changes on the vehicles. This is what we do. I mean, we've been seeing this throughout the years. Times are different. Challenges are let's say, probably from a different magnitude or coming maybe from different angles. But at the end, looking at cycles over the years, going through crises or shifts in technology, I guess now is different, but the nature of it is about managing change. That doesn't change.
Yeah, I would just add that, when you think about the macroeconomics, there's only so much as car producers that we control, right? But there's also a market, and there's also dealers, and there's all these other stakeholders that influence the price of the vehicle. So I think what was said earlier is exactly right. We'll control the cost the best we can, but as far as controlling the overall market, that's very difficult to do.
Let's talk about workforce. I know that's a big topic. I was really intrigued by the governor's remarks. She said that they just did some restructuring to the labor department here to kind of try to increase workforce participation. I know this has been, again, this is another one of those things that's been an issue as long as I've been on the beat. I think it got sharper during the pandemic, with the shortage of workers. What does it feel like to you guys now? Are you able to hire for all the positions that you have?
Yeah, if Jason and Polaris would quit taking my people, I'd be okay. But
Yeah, we're training them for you.
I'm just kidding. Well, I'll speak about Huntsville here. Both as the governor mentioned, as Mayor Battle mentioned, it's cool to be in a city that's really growing, and they've done a great job of bringing business here and creating a lot of jobs. But at the same time, I think there's a lot happening here to try to also bring in, young talent. So honestly, at Mazda Toyota, we haven't seen a problem with actually recruiting and hiring employees like you would think. I mean, we've got, applications of people that want to come to work for us all the time. So I think it's more about, manufacturing jobs and how do we appeal to this next generation of employees. That's a bigger challenge to retain those folks that come in initially in the door. So I think that's what we're working on, is trying to make sure that the people that we hire, we can actually retain.
What's the biggest competition? If you're trying to get them into manufacturing, I mean, do they all want to be TikTok influencers, or what are you fighting against? Who's your competition for that talent?
Yeah, for me, I think this generation is about flexibility. It's, if I want to be an Uber driver and I can turn on my app and go to work when I want to go to work, that's very appealing. Where in a manufacturing facilities, I need you there. I need you there to be able to, to run your process. So I think it's figuring a way to create flexibility, maybe not to the point of an Uber driver, but more flexibility for employees. I think that's going to be the key in the future.
Shane, I'm going to call you out now. What's
it
like at Hyundai?
I was waiting to be able to jump in. Montgomery, we're unique. There's not a lot of competition around Montgomery except for our suppliers. We're kind of the lone manufacturer down there in Montgomery. We actually have a really good backlog of employees to fill open positions, especially in the team member level. Now, of course, pandemic. You mentioned pandemic. Yes, we had a hard time after the pandemic. But that has since stemmed off, and we actually do have a nice backlog of employees ready to come in to fill those team member positions when we do have open positions. Now, on the professional side of things, like engineers and logistics specialists, those type of things, to retain those, that's even harder because, I'm sure you guys have experienced it. They come out of college, they spend 2 years at your place, and they go someplace else to make more money. But from a Hyundai perspective, we try to teach them how large Hyundai, Hyundai Motor Group is globally, and try to show them there is a future. If you stay with the company, there is a future with the Hyundai company.
Well, also, I mean, it's just interesting. You know, I've been based in Detroit for the last 6 years, and it feels like a totally different thing from when I come down to the South. You know, I'm from Atlanta. Atlanta has grown so much. Apparently, Huntsville has grown so much. It just sounds like it's a different challenge. And you know, in Michigan, we're all thinking about how do we keep our auto industry? How do we? Everybody wants to create jobs, no matter where you are, have a strong economy. But it sounds like for you, it's like you have the jobs, you need the people to fill them. What about? I'm really interested in what you said about flexibility. I mean, that in some ways that just seems like the opposite of manufacturing is all about precision. You know, repetition, doing it the same way, the same time, over and over again. How do you accommodate that?
Well, from a production aspect, yes, there is a lot of repetitiveness, but from a model mix type of scenario or powertrain mix, you have to remain flexible, and especially in today's day and age, because you know EVs were huge just a few years ago. Now they've kind of backed off on EVs, so you have to stay flexible to where you can change your model mix up to build a hybrid or build an ICE engine or a EV. And Hyundai, we've really had that possibility to stay flexible in that realm. We're able to meet consumer demand. You know, what consumers demand, we're flexible enough that we can build that product for them.
Yeah, I would just add from a flexibility for workforce, I think it's where can you get creative? So for example, for Mazda Toyota, we operate on a 2-shift pattern, and every 30 days the team members rotate from day shift to evening shift, right? So, you know, it's hard to get really creative with that kind of shift pattern. But can you do things where you allow people to, you know, like the second shift on evening shift, can they come in early before, you know, a holiday, for example? Can you shift, you know, give them flexibility on those kind of opportunities? So I think it's just how do you get creative about the shift pattern and create that flexibility for the team members?
There's one more.
You mentioned flexibility, and for our associates, flexibility means work-life balance. And you know, at Honda in Alabama, for our first 20 years, we rotated shifts between first, second shift, and based on feedback and the associate voice, to give them a better work-life balance, we changed to a fixed shift pattern last year. And as we also started to think about how do we give our associates time off when they need to spend time with their family, or they have an emergency, or doctor's appointments, we had to get creative and how to supplement our workforce, Monday, Friday workforce as an example, so that our associates can get the time off that they need when they need it.
There's one more aspect on flexibility, and this relates to the complexity of vehicles and products. And this we rely on our team members for their skills to be able to work on different models, on different areas, and how they learn and how they perform is so important for us, but also for them, taking pride on their competence, on what they can do to build different vehicles with different specifications, working in different process areas. So very proud of that. And also for the support we receive from AIDT and the state, in order to create a hub for training that we can translate into people that really know what to do, and they have the pride on that.
I think I'd like to build on that, because I think that's key, right? It is, you're right. From a manufacturing standpoint, we're very process focused and very, very detail oriented from a process standpoint. So how do we make them, and how can we use technology to make them as simple as possible, so they're easy to learn and easy to replicate, and then build the individual skills so that if a new team member can come in with a skill set, I can teach the process quickly, then I get a little bit more flexibility. And I think Lamar is right. It's a little bit about work-life balance, and it's about life is happening to me, so I can't spend 10 hours a day at work. I need to be able to take care of my family as well. And how do you pull all of that together with the backdrop of baby boomers and Gen X are beginning to retire, the workforce size is shrinking, and so I think that's where the governor's perspective on bringing more workforce participation levels higher, because we need to get more people into the workforce, right? So we've got too many people on the sidelines right now, and some of these things with simple processes and a little bit more flexibility from how they can kind of handle and manage their day is going to be huge for getting people back into the workforce.
it's really interesting also to think about, you mentioned tech being like an important learning tool. I think right now, if you just think about the economy as a whole, there is a lot of anxiety and uncertainty around AI, what this is doing to just employment in general. We're not sure. We know there's a lot of change coming. How does that change this picture? Is automation part of the solution? Is it about training and like sort of taking some of it away? AI can do some stuff so the humans focus on the, harder tasks. I'm not sure, but I'm just curious. There's such a disconnect between, just this anxiety about lack of jobs in AI versus guys have jobs. You're like, it's just so ironic, right? Like that you have the opposite problem. You need to get more people who want the jobs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't see AI replacing a manufacturing job, right? It's going to be really, really hard. Maybe at some point, robots are cognitive enough that they can do what a human can do, but not today. And I don't see that any time in the foreseeable future. I think it could act like a force multiplier. Like I talk to AI every day, right? I have a conversation with ChatGPT every day. It helps me kind of organize and coordinate my thoughts, but it won't do anything for me. I hate to say it that way, but I think those are things where you can get some efficiencies and some benefits. Automation has always been important from a manufacturing standpoint, but it's really not about eliminating the job. It's about eliminating the hard part of the task so that it's easier for the operator to be able to be successful. And I think if we go in with that person-centric thought process and mindset, then the processes get easier, and that workforce conversation that we were having before gets a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, regarding the workforce, we just spent some time talking about the need for us to attract talent, hire talent, and the ideas, the innovation, the creativity that's generated from our team of associates, can't be replaced by automation, AI. Now, we are always looking for ways to increase our competitiveness and offer value to our customers, and we see that there's tremendous potential with automation and AI as a tool for our associates to help them do their jobs in different ways. Now, the specifics or the how-to, I would say we're still evaluating that and considering how best to deploy that technology.
Yeah, when I think of vehicle manufacturing, to me it's when you think about, and I'm going to get a little detailed, but when you think about the manufacturing of a vehicle, the back shops, like stamping shops and body weld shops and paint shops, are already heavily automated in most facilities. Where you don't see the automation as much is in the assembly part. And a lot of that is because of the, taking care of the parts, making sure they don't get damaged, those kind of things. So I do see that as an area that will, it's kind of ripe for, automation. But I think exactly like Lamar and Jason said, it's going to be all about how do you reduce the difficulty in those assembly shops for the team members that will add to the automation. I don't think it's going to replace those jobs, but it just actually will help the team members that are doing those jobs.
I think another really important piece of this workforce picture is immigration policy. That's another big change that we're going through right now in this country. I think, when we were talking for this panel, I think it was the week of or right after there was the ICE raid on the Hyundai plant outside Savannah. Some people look at this and they think, how can we do both at the same time? How can we bring back all this manufacturing to the United States? There's this huge emphasis on making things here again, on decoupling from China. And at the same time, we're taking a part of the labor force and saying, we don't want you here right now, or at least not, we want a different system under which you'll be here. That kind of remains to be seen. Do you think that the auto industry, that the country can achieve our manufacturing goals, can we do both at the same time? Do you see those two things as in conflict or not? And yeah, I'll just start with that question.
I can't speak on the Savannah situation, but because I'm representing the Hyundai of Alabama plant, and like I stated before, we're in a fortunate situation right now at Montgomery that we actually have a backlog of backlog of employees waiting to come on board. And we also take that backlog and we work with our suppliers, because we do have a lot of local suppliers around the Montgomery area. So we actually work with them to, when we have a backlog, to help them fill their positions as well. So right now, we don't see that affecting us in the Montgomery area for that situation.
As Shane mentioned, and what we're seeing at Honda, yes, we can do both. But to begin with, we want to ensure that all Honda associates are legally authorized to work in the United States. And we strictly adhere to all applicable laws, regulations related to verification of employment status. Now, nonetheless, expansion of manufacturing in the U.S. Will require access, availability of a healthy labor market, a workforce that is skilled and adaptable, which is why we focus so much on workforce retention, continuing to invest in our associates, train, reskill, develop our leadership team so that our team stays future ready. Now, where the impact of that will also be felt is within our supply chain, where we have almost 700 Tier 1 OEM suppliers supporting us and more than 1,600 service part providers. So we also are working with them to ensure that they can both attract, hire the talent that they need while also staying in compliance with the law.
I'll echo what Lamar said. I think both are 100% you can do both, right? I think we do at Polaris, same thing, right? We make sure that the team members that we have employed are authorized to work in the country and authorized to do what they do. So I think immigration reform and manufacturing job increases, I think are, okay, maybe they're interrelated to some degree, but really they're unique. For me, they're kind of unique efforts. On the manufacturing increase side, I think it comes back to workforce participation. If you think about it, state of Alabama, I might be a little bit wrong on my numbers, but somewhere around 65, 66% workforce participation statewide. So 34% of the workforce between 16 and 65 is not participating in the workforce. If you do the math and look at those numbers, and I think that's where Governor Ivey is coming from, that's the workforce, right? That's how we improve and increase the manufacturing footprint in the U.S. And Alabama lags behind the nation a little bit. So even if you look across the nation, of course there are pockets, but understanding why people aren't participating in the workforce, figuring out how do I get them skilled up to be able to be successful in manufacturing and get them back into the workforce, it's going to be key to figuring that problem out.
Yeah, I would just add, I think Lamar and Jason are accurate. It's, to me, it's what is the process for people to be able to work legally in the country. I think that's the main focus, because when I think about, we're here in the Von Braun Center, right? So when I think about the American dream, I think it's alive and well. It's just creating that path for individuals to do it legally. And I think if we're able to do that as a country, it will help offset the workforce participation that maybe we don't have. But, for me, this is one of those personal things. I just think a lot of folks have come into the country and been able to get, the legal documents to be able to work in the country. And that's the pay that you make to be privileged to work in this country. And, as long as folks are able to do that, I think, it's the American dream, and it should be, live and well for a long time to come.
Thank you. Those are really thoughtful answers. And I think one of the things I'm hearing is we got to solve the hard problems, right? Like the easy way is to just use, undocumented immigrant is cheaper. But the hard problem is figuring out why 34% of the workforce is not participating in the economy and trying to solve that problem. So that's interesting. Okay, easier question for you. Well, maybe not so easy. How are you guys adapting to the change in policy towards electrification? I know even me as a journalist, I spent the past 4 years focusing all on batteries and EVs and technology, and then overnight, okay, we're not doing that anymore. So I can't, I'm oversimplifying, and of course we still are, but it looks different. So how
How are you guys, how are your companies adapting to that change, to this change in, yeah, I mean, from the quote unquote EV mandate to, you have a lot more kind of freedom to make what people want, it seemed like, so.
Yeah,
Well, basically-
sorry, I was,
Go ahead.
yep,
Go
no,
ahead.
you go ahead. Yeah,
Well, thank you.
you go ahead.
Appreciate it. All right, so that let's say brings a silver lining, if you will, to be able to listen more to what the market wants, right? Because the demand for EVs probably in many cases we had the chance to jump too deep, too soon, too quick, and that did not pull through in the way expected, right? So now being able to by scale sense what the market is really asking for, and still be able to pace the growth into more EV demand. I guess that is the answer. Like mentioned before, here we don't have the crystal ball. We can have an idea that this will take longer than expected, but having that ability to have a product mix that can be managed and a workforce that can put together different products, whether it's EV or in internal combustion engine or hybrids. This is what right now the strategy is, and be able, let's say, coming now in a more of a rhythm, having a bit of a progression. Like Alabama Mobility and Power has made extensive studies, and the years that it will take for the infrastructure to be built in the country in different areas. Maybe East and West Coast have more infrastructure than center of the country. So until that develops, then people will be, let's say, more confident to say, oh, I'll jump in an EV. Most people going into an EV don't want to go back to a gas engine vehicle. So we see that the trend will grow, but now the issue is how long it'll take, what is the speed.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's been really nice to work for a company where your chairman, in our case, Akio Toyoda, had it perfect, right? Of course, back in the day, maybe people didn't think he had it perfect, but it was all about building a vehicle that the customer wants, and that was the focus. And so, for Toyota, it was great to have just a great portfolio of hybrid vehicles and vehicles that customers really wanted. So, transitioning to where EV didn't move as fast as people thought, it's been a great spot for us to be in. So, but I still think that's really what you need to think about. I think you need to think about what does the customer really want, and not force a product on the customer, but allow the customer to actually choose.
Yeah, and regarding what the customer wants, at Honda's Alabama Auto Plant, we are the sole producer of the 4 models we produce there, light trucks powered by V6 gasoline engines, and we're also Honda's largest light truck manufacturing facility in our global footprint. And in recent months, all of our models have enjoyed record-breaking sales. So what we build here is critically important to the success of global Honda, and we expect that they will continue to remain popular and be in high demand with our customers. Yet we still feel the future of personal mobility is electrification. And we are taking steps to increase our EV production capacity in the United States. But for the immediate, as he mentioned, we want to offer an exciting portfolio of products that align with our customer preference, and that includes gasoline vehicles, hybrid vehicles, as well as battery electric vehicles.
Shane?
It goes back to what I said earlier about remaining flexible in the manufacturing environment. Hyundai's still dedicated to making EVs. We're developing extended range EVs, EREVs, but we're also expanding our hybrids, and we're also still with the internal combustion engines. So it's all about consumer demand. When the consumer demand switches to HEVs, we're flexible enough. Hyundai just announced $26 billion investment in the United States. Part of that is to help us with our flexibility at a supplier base, making our supplier base more regional, but also making our plants flexible to where we can build an EV. Like we've built the GV70 EV at our facility, and you have HMGMA that's making EVs. and making that plant flexible to where it could possibly build a hybrid if needed. But that's what that $26 billion investment is to make Hyundai more flexible based on consumer demand.
Okay, so flexibility is key. I mean, it sounds trite, but it's really true. I feel like a few years ago you had, right, there were sort of a lot of different car makers were making big decisive bets in one way or the other, you know, and not everybody's going to be right? But I mean, okay, if you're Toyota, okay, nailed it, hybrid, you got it. But now the ones that talked about flexibility seem to be, that's what everyone's moving to. It's sort of being ready to move when it comes versus trying to make the market just appear when there's all these other factors that maybe weren't quite ready yet. If I could just zoom out a little bit, because I'm always thinking about, you know, I know how important the auto industry is to the United States, and really, if you look around the world, any major economy, if you have a strong auto industry, that's a major source of jobs. Manufacturing is becoming more and more, it feels almost like a national security issue to have a really strong, you know, manufacturing backbone. So let's zoom out a bit and think about what's happening in the rest of the world. Because the US is doing its thing, we're kind of course correcting and we're sort of letting the consumer decide. That's what the free market's all about. That's what has always traditionally powered the US economy. But you also, we live in you know, we're not the only kid on the block or the biggest kid on the block anymore. The biggest car market in the world is China. The US is number 2. And, you know, the Chinese automakers are working very hard to, I mean, this is becoming a huge issue around the world of China, you know, exporting electric cars, or maybe sometimes they're hybrid or maybe powertrain agnostic, but they're, you know, they have a lot of excess capacity and they're setting that around the world. So my question is, if we are going at our own pace here in the United States, but China is going at a different pace and they're gaining market share in Europe, in South America, in Southeast Asia, is sort of like the larger, how do we make sure that we're ready to compete globally if we're doing our own thing and then there's a different game happening in the rest of the world? I guess that's I hope that question makes sense. It's sort of like, how do we do, you know, are we going at our own pace but then risking our future competitiveness if we're not in sync with the rest of the global auto market? That's a big one, but...
Very difficult question.
I know, these are tough questions. You don't have to have the perfect answer, but just these are the things I'm grappling with as a reporter right now.
Well, you know, been in China several years, right, and had the chance to see the very beginning of the, let's say, development of electric vehicles, and when the government came out and like basically was a big project for the future in putting China in the front of the automotive industry. That was the intention, to develop electric vehicles and become the forefront of technology. So they've been working in that for Christ, over 20 years. And that was fueled a lot by subsidies from the government, by support, by also creating hubs, and basically getting not only startups but also companies that they shifted from traditional ICE vehicles into electric. So and that, you know, when you look at today at the big players in regards to what is battery technology or powertrain EV technology, they have created this core of not only knowledge but also economy of scale that makes it possible to really grow. So if we were to look into what is it here in the US, right? The market is here, the knowledge is here, the ability to do technology is here too, is how to look into the growth of the market, but also how to create, let's say, mechanisms in which not only government but companies are, let's say, in many cases pulling together to create that economy of scale, that ability to scale the technology into not only in the product but also in the processes too. So certainly it's possible, but you know, looking into Chinese vehicle, how much they've grown into quality, in function, and how they scale their business is really something to take a look deep and learn from what they've done.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, to me it boils down to being globally competitive. And as you know very well, because of what you do for a living, you know, this China automotive industry is real. I mean, if you look at their products, they're very nice products. And I think, you know, for us in the U.S., it's about, you know, the collaboration with government, obviously, just like, you know, the Chinese backing that their automotive industry's had from the government. It's been phenomenal. So I think that's really important for us to be able to compete on a global level. Chinese vehicles are, you know, as you mentioned, they've really moved forward in their quality and their technology and their innovation and all those kind of things. And I think our industry will continue to do that here in the U.S., but we got to recognize that it's global competition.
How important is it to have sort of, we as a country, we're taking, I mean, the Trump administration is a much more protectionist stance, you know? I mean, we're putting up a lot of tariffs to protect our own industry, to make sure that companies here can do business and make money and employ people. I mean, we're really having like I said, this moment is all about big change. Do you think that's the right, I mean, is that gonna be successful in the long term? Putting up, I mean, is that part of the equation to kind of compete, staying competitive with China, where, like you talked about, it's just a totally different model. You know, they're not playing the same game. There's government subsidies. The economy is just structured totally differently. You know, the government is kind of calling the shots on what the car makers do. So is this moment of tariffs and things, you think that's a successful piece of the equation of staying competitive in the long term and having a strong U.S. auto industry?
Federico mentioned all of the key ingredients being here in the U.S. But to remain as an innovative leader in a hyper-competitive global marketplace, the U.S. auto industry, we need to continue to make major investments in manufacturing, R&D, while also taking steps to strengthen and secure our global supply chains. Clearly, a concern issue for the U.S. auto industry as it relates to China is, you know, whether China will dominate global marketplace with key components necessary to manufacture next generation vehicles. So we need to continue to onshore the production of key components, invest in mining, refining process of critical rare earth minerals, but just overall to compete, win a global race, remain an innovative leader is going to take kind of collaboration with key international partners and allies.
Yeah, you know, what I would say about your question is I think this phase of what's happening helps the automotive industry in the U.S. to recognize the challenge that China brings in the future. And therefore, it gives us a chance to not only catch up, but to continue to progress. So I think the key point is just to recognize, you know, the vehicles that they are making and the influence that they've had with their support from a government standpoint, and to be able to catch up and stay a leader.
Yeah, it doesn't mean take your foot off the brake at all, right? It's not about getting comfortable. It's about using that advantage, that time, to really get even more competitive. Yeah. Let's talk about, we've got a little over 5 minutes left. Let's just talk about what the car market feels like right now. We just finished the third quarter auto sales in the U.S. I would say that auto sales, they keep surprising to the upside. But there's also been a lot of kind of one-time drivers. I know from covering this in the spring, in March and April, when the president first started announcing some of the tariff changes, there was car dealers were saying, hey, come get your pre-tariff vehicle now. You know, a lot of people ran out to get a car. We just saw the expiration of the EV tax credit, which also brought a lot of sales of people, you know, running out to get EVs. Those are sort of external one-time factors. You obviously have a plan of how many cars you think you're going to sell, how many cars you have to make. What are you guys looking at for, the fourth quarter this year, going into 2026? What does it feel like? How robust is it? What does the supply-demand balance feel like right now?
You just mentioned two factors that kind of distorted this year, right? So it makes it difficult to really understand what is the true behavior of the market without those two major things, the pre-tariff moment, the EV tax credits, that those kind of bring swings upside down, to how volumes, how we reacting to the demand from the market. So I guess for the next, let's say, year, we just look probably, not knowing what we know, we have that a big question mark about what else is coming, but so far we see more stability, a bit of a more, let's say, consistent, pull from the market from what we have seen this year, right?
Yeah, I'll just mention specific models. We have our Mississippi team here today, and they produce a Corolla there in Blue Springs, and we produce a Corolla Cross here at the Mazda Toyota facility here in Huntsville. And both of those products we can't build enough. I mean, and it's been that way all year long. And I also think like with economic factors, those two vehicles we tend to do really, really well when people get a little nervous because they may drop a segment, for example. And then our Mazda CX-50 is also, record sales. So both, all three of those products are doing really, really well, at least, here in my small visibility. And again, we talked earlier, from a broader perspective, it's just making those hybrid vehicles, they're flying off the shelf. So they're doing really well too. So I think it's going to be a fantastic year for 2025.
Shane, do you have anything you wanted to say?
I was going to say for 2025, from a Hyundai perspective, especially the Alabama models, the Santa Fe and the Tucson and the Genesis GV70, we really had a really good year. We build based off a 90-day projection of what our sales team tells us. And going into the fourth quarter of 2025, we've had really, really good sales, and we still project into the fourth quarter still having really good sales of the Tucson and the Santa Fe and the GV70. So 2026, that's a little far out to project on, but for 2025, we're going to finish strong.
Okay. We did talk about having a little bit of Q&A with the audience. I'm not sure if anybody has a burning question they want to ask our panelists. I could always keep going. I've always got questions. I see someone.
You can see out there?
What?
I can't see anything.
I know it's a bit intimidating. Oh, wait, I see someone. Okay, wait. Okay, I see a gentleman over here standing up. We'll hand you a mic. You come close. Yeah.
David, just because you give up your mic doesn't mean you don't have to answer.
Okay, I have an interesting question. I guess so I step up on stage with everyone?
Whatever you. Yeah,
Hi.
sure. Fortune
So-
favors the bold. Here we go.
I'm just curious, would you ever consider a 4-day work week? Because I know you mentioned that you're needing to consider what it means to have Gen Z workers who have more flexibility. Have you ever considered the productivity change that a 4-day work week brings to the market? I'll give this back to you.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things with the 4-day work week. We have studied some of that. You do give up, obviously, because usually that's a 4-10 because it's going to be a 40-hour work week, right? So what you give up there is if the demand is high, then you end up working your Friday, which normally would be your Saturday. So then that kind of takes away the advantage of that 4-day work week. So I think it all depends on where you're at and how high your demand is. If your demand isn't so high, then maybe you could get away with that 4-day work week. But if you have high demand, you're just going to end up working a lot of Fridays.
Thank you. One other consideration with that 4-day work week is I've seen 2 different splits where you have an A and B shift that kind of covers the gap between those two.
Yeah, we actually implemented a 4-day work week at our facility years ago in response to market demand. We since have transitioned out of that back to a 5-day work week So I wouldn't say that that's not something we would ever consider because we did it. I also believe we learned some things from that experience, and if there were an opportune time to do it again, it would be something that we would look at.
And I would-
Because, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So very quickly, I think in my career, I'd say every 6 months we look at can we transition to 4x10s. And to David's point, when you switch to 4x10s, then you always work Friday, and then you've just kind of thrown everything out the window, right? So the only times that they've really worked in manufacturing for me is when you're running 24/7, and you've already got all that time covered, right? So there really is no need from a flexing standpoint. But I would say we'll continue to look at that because you're right. It's an interesting value proposition from an employer to employee standpoint and from a team member standpoint.
Not all is let's say, it's not the grass is green on the other side on the 10 hour shift. When you are in manufacturing, 10 hours on a manufacturing job is hard. So even if you have 4 days working beyond 8 hours, 9 hours on the line is difficult, right? So this is something that probably could be done for periods of times in which you have to adjust to demand and so forth. But it's hard on the people. And although it may seem something attractive, right? When you're in it, right? Early in my career, I worked on the line, different jobs, and it's really hard. It's really hard to a point, that the 8-hour shifts gives you the chance to have a bit of a more of a normal life, to do things after work and so forth. When you go in the 10-hour shift, those 2 hours make a whole difference in how your day develops. So when you look into how interactions is with families, right? That the 10-hour shifts is kind of destroy that routine of the dinner or the homework or watching the kids for sports. So it is something that could be, there's no a single shift that will cater to all the population, right? In a factory, right? Young people may prefer that, I have a day off, but to families maybe it's harder for them. So it is something that it has to be always in consideration, and also for the length you do it. Right?
Thank you. That was a great question. I probably was a little overly ambitious in how much time we had. I think we've got to cut it and move on to our next panel, but our next activity. But thank you so much. Thank you all for your candor and your thoughts, and really great conversation. Thank you for doing this, and you can always ask them more questions off stage. Thank you.